Hi there, welcome to another tutorial here by Man and Drone, tutorial number 5, how to capture epic aerial footage. So let's talk briefly about how great aerial cinematography can be achieved. There are many variables that can contribute to great aerial footage. The most important ones in my opinion would be some of the following: vision, planning, technical abilities and camera technique, location and timing, weather, and confidence. If you can master those disciplines, then you're well on your way to creating high-end aerial cinematography. So let's now look at each discipline and break them down further to give you an idea of what we're looking for. What's your vision? Having a naturally creative or artistic ability will give you a good edge when it comes to cinematography. We can learn all the technical aspects to cinematography we like, but at the end of the day, if you're not out there flying, recording, getting your vision down, then nothing's going to happen. Try to understand everything in my tutorials, and go out and put your own twist on it, have an idea, then run with it. It's important to carry out proper planning for our creations. A lot of my footage has been done with just a vague knowledge of an area, or I only had one battery with me, or is getting dark within 60 minutes. If we took a little more time to plan, and we would minimize any potential problems. It's important to know that sometimes just going out with a rough idea and executing it can often produce good results too. If I'm doing a sunrise or sunset shot, a great app for Android devices is Planet for photographers. I use this for my stills photography to learn exactly what time and where the sun is due to rise and set, for example. I'll then plan everything else around this shot and the vision I have. Plan for the logistics. How are you going to get to that location? How are you going to get there early enough so you're able to capture the sunrise or sunset, for example? Check traffic reports if you plan on doing a road trip or have a long drive ahead of you. Plan for food and drink. If you're out all day, make sure you have enough supplies. Plan your flight times around your drone batteries. Make sure they're all fully charged. Check to see whether you have access to a power supply or recharge on your location. Do an equipment inspection before you leave home. Look for cracks, bent props, gimbal problems or camera problems. SD cards that need formatting. Backup memory cards. Create a full equipment list and include items such as lens cleaner and filter cleaning cloth. These will really come in handy in dusty sort of environments. Make sure you've got your pre-flight checks dialed so they become habitual. Are you flying in a restricted area such as a national park or public space? Will you require permission? What about insurance? Do dummy test runs with your drone to make sure you can clear obstacles. Let's say you want to fly your drone across a lake and then over some trees. It's important to check every angle and not just the position behind the drone. This is so to check whether you have enough clearance over trees or whether obstacles in the distance can sometimes rise up, and it's hard to judge that if your line of sight is only just behind the drone. Thankfully though, with these newer drones, we're seeing these obstacle avoidance systems which are built in, which can reduce these problems. You should have a good understanding of basic photography principles as well as editing and exporting by now. If you've studied my tutorials 1 through 4, you will learn good enough knowledge in order to produce some good results. By now you should have a good grasp on frame rates, shutter speed, using ND filters to achieve a desirable exposure, best export settings, and basic editing techniques within Premiere CC. When shooting video with our drones, your controller hand movements should be as smooth as possible. Any pans or tilts should be done with precision and allow for enough footage either side of the clip so you can trim it down as necessary to hide any obvious user errors. Let me give you an example of a flight and filming user error. With this shot you can see it's non-linear and would look extremely amateurish if we put it into an entire sequence, unless we cut out those parts and just have the footage which looked smooth. Now let's look at some of my favourite examples of shooting techniques. The bird's eye shot. So this shot really is a classic. It allows us to fit a lot more into our pictures whilst giving us that unique perspective. Very easy to achieve. Just have to tilt your gimbal all the way down so the camera's pointing downwards. Just make sure it's flat. And then fly the drone straight up using the throttle up, which is on the left hand side of the controller. The higher up, usually the better for these type of pictures. Just be aware of any 400-foot height restrictions. The pullback reveal. This is a great way to reveal the area you're filming, and it can look quite cinematic and professional if done correctly. It's amazing for revealing things like waterfalls in their surroundings. What you have to do for these is fly past or very close to your subject, and when you're ready, throttle up, pitch down, and fly the drone away from your subject. Now with this glacier waterfall one, I used the throttle up to allow the drone to climb, so the sun, which was out of shot, could suddenly appear in shot, and the same with the top of the glacier. And I used the pitch down to fly the drone away to reveal more of the surroundings. So it does look pretty nice when done correctly. This lookout tower shot here in Austria was achieved by flying past the tower, then bringing the drone backwards with the pitch down and a slight throttle down. The camera I had was pointed at about a 60-degree angle. I then, as carefully as I could, used the gimbal control dial on the controller to very slightly move the camera up whilst flying back over the tower. This looks nice if done correctly, but it will take a couple of attempts to get it right. Low-level flying. This is a great one for drones as they allow us to get very close to the ground level whilst moving. My favourites are usually over water, things like seas or lakes. They're very easy to do. Just keep the camera fixed, pointing straight, flying forward and keep in a straight line. Be very careful to check that the drone has enough clearance so that you don't end up in the water. Again, keep the controls straight. We don't want to see any judders, left to right movement. A good and accurate way to make sure you're getting a consistent speed would be to use the intelligent flight mode and plot a simple line point A to B with pitch up. The high up surrounding shot. This classic shot can look quite good if you've done it right. So we have to choose an altitude quite high. Try one of at least 100 meters, but just be aware of the 400-foot restriction laws in your country. That roughly equates to 122 meters. You want to fly the drone in a straight line with the camera in a fixed position. So tilt the camera down roughly 30 degrees. You want to use the pitch up, which is on the right hand side of your controller. Try to capture movement of things like cars or nature or stuff that's going on, just to try and make the shot look interesting. Otherwise it's going to be fairly static. Flybys and flyovers. A very simple and effective way of using your drone. Check out some of these examples here. Just try and keep the flybys and flyovers at a consistent speed though, otherwise this will be visible within the footage. So you use the pitch up on the right hand side of the controller and just keep your hands nice and steady. Orbiting, POI, point of interest. I would say that this shot and droney shot are my favourites. It was a very hard shot to achieve before the addition of the intelligent flight modes, but thankfully now it's very easy. So when your drone is in the air, you want to switch it over to the intelligent flight mode, navigate your way to the point of interest mode or orbit mode depending on which drone you own. So you want to follow the simple on-screen instructions. It's going to take you several orbits to achieve your desired results. So you want to try several different orbiting speeds. It's going to vary on location and the subject matter you're filming. So when you're ready, when you've roughly set some speeds and distances away from the center of your subject, you're going to want to hit that record button so you make sure you're recording the video. And you want to keep an eye on your battery levels as well, because it's going to take you several attempts to get the perfect orbit. Following mode. Again, another good intelligent flight mode. Great for following something like a vehicle. So once your drone is airborne, you want to navigate to the intelligent flight mode. and then navigate to the Follow Me section, and then follow the on-screen instructions. If in a vehicle though, just be careful not to drive too fast, as the top speed of the Phantom 3s is only around 35 miles an hour. As drones are becoming more advanced though, we're seeing things like active track on the Phantom 4 appear. So this will track any moving object without that object requiring the remote control. But they are limited by a speed. So as the technology evolves though, we're likely to see that overcome those limitations. If we incorporate all of those methods, we should have some nice shots to edit for our overall creation. We should try and aim for having every drone shot as smooth as possible, from point A to point B. If it's just you filming, keep the camera in a fixed position unless you've mastered a very smooth gimbal action. Remember that slow and steady is going to win this race. Intelligent flight modes will help us no end to achieve good linear filming. The only downside so far with these modes is that there are limitations. Limitations to how high and how low or how near we can get to a point of interest. There's also limitations on how fast the drone is actually allowed to go. Some custom apps such as Litchi will get around these problems, but it's worth noting that they will void the manufacturer's warranty should the worst happen. Location is key. It's a huge part in really maximizing what these drones are capable of. The most impressive stuff is usually stunning nature landscape shots. For a lot of people though, reaching these locations isn't always an option, so we have to make do with what we have. Use the lighting conditions to your advantage. Tell a story. Make something ordinary interesting by using several of the different shooting styles I've mentioned. If we combine all this with sound effects and tasteful music, we really can transform something every day into an interesting story. Weather plays a huge part in whether we're able to fly or not. It's always a sensible idea to plan at least a few days in advance by looking at a week's weather forecast. Look out for things like extreme temperatures, extreme being 50 degrees and above, or if it's minus 10 centigrade or colder. If it's raining, forget it. Same with snow and strong winds. Ideally we want calm, sunny or cloudy with a mild climate. Early morning light and later evening light for sunsets. Filming during the afternoon or midday is also fine, providing you have the correct exposure values by using the appropriate ND filter and polarizing filters. Let's take a look at some examples now, and we can look at the different lighting situations and time of the day. It's important you have full confidence in your abilities and your drone's ability. I remember when I first started out flying over water, for example, I was fairly nervous as I didn't want to risk losing my drone. Build up the number of flights. Once you accumulate over 30 full flights, you'll find your confidence improve. If you've done all the pre-flight checks properly, then there's no reason to ever doubt the ability of your drone. So send it high, Send it out over water. Make sure you got your flight log enabled though on your controller side, just in case the worst should happen. Have complete confidence with the area you're filming and yourself. If your adrenaline is high, then it's likely to affect your hand controller movements. Make sure you're in a calm state before flying, so controller movement would be spot on. This concludes the man and drone tutorial on how to capture epic aerial footage. Don't forget to subscribe and follow me on all the relevant social networks: Facebook, Instagram, Vimeo and Twitter. Join me in the next tutorial where I'll be showing you how to create the ultimate droney. So until then, thanks for watching and see you soon.